All right, so get ready. We're going to dive into something really interesting.
Okay.
We're not just talking about a politician grabbing a burger here. We're peeling back all the layers of how media and even TikTok comments can really shape a narrative. You know how sometimes a simple campaign stop, it becomes like this huge GE news story?
Right.
That's what we're going to unpack today. You sent in some really interesting articles and some social media posts about a recent Donald Trump campaign stop at McDonald's. And things got, well, they got interesting.
Yeah, it's a classic example, like a really good example of how even like mundane events, like going to McDonald's, become like really politically charged. So we're going to look at how different media outlets are framing this, from local newspapers all the way to TikTok comments, and see what these interpretations actually like reveal about the story.
Okay, so let's start with that Philadelphia Inquirer article that you shared. They didn't exactly seem thrilled with this McDonald's visit, did they?
Not really. The Inquirer, it went beyond just like a simple recap of what happened. They dug into the narrative of Trump's campaign events, and they suggested that a lot of these events are more for show than substance. They even called this appearance a stunt.
Really? A stunt? What makes them say that?
Well, they highlighted how the McDonald's was seemingly shut down for this event, and it was filled with what they called fake customers. So it kind of implies that this whole thing was staged for a photo op.
So they're suggesting that, like, all of this was very carefully orchestrated just to project a certain image.
Exactly. And to emphasize how significant they think this is, they actually quoted their own editor-in-chief, who said that local media coverage carries a lot of weight, especially in swing states. So the implication is that Trump might not be getting, like, the most positive local coverage that he might have hoped for.
It's interesting how they connect that local perspective to the broader political landscape.
Right.
So we've got this critical take from a local newspaper. What happens when we bring in social media? You mentioned TikTok.
Yeah. That's where things get really, really fascinating. The independent piece that you shared, it dives headfirst into these TikTok reactions. And let's just say they didn't hold back.
Oh, I could only imagine. TikTok can be brutal.
It can be, and in this case, it definitely was. They focused on how people were really just roasting Trump for his attempts to look like he was working at McDonald's. Apparently, there's footage of him putting fries in a bag. Yeah. And the comment section is just full of people making fun of him, saying things like, "Just put the fries in the bag, Grandpa."
Ouch. Yeah, I guess even a staged event can't really control the narrative when you've got millions of TikTok users chiming in with their own hot takes.
Exactly. It just shows how social media has empowered like anyone to become a commentator, and usually a very unfiltered one, so adds like a whole other layer of complexity to how these political events are perceived.
Yeah, it really highlights the contrast, doesn't it? You've got traditional media with the Philadelphia Inquirer presenting this really calculated analysis, and then on the other hand, you have the raw and unfiltered reactions of people on TikTok.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that both of these things contribute to shaping public opinion, even if they're coming from completely different places. And it's not even just about making fun of him. The comments on TikTok, they tell us a lot about how people see Trump's message and his image.
It's not just about the laughs. It's like a window into how the public really feels. So we got these two very different lenses, this critical local newspaper, and all of these like raw reactions on TikTok. So what happens when we look at something different?
That's where we can really start to see how different media outlets are shaping these narratives. You also sent me this excerpt. That seems to be from like a pro-Trump media outlet. Yeah. And they're telling a completely different story.
Yeah, it's like you're stepping into a totally different world.
Right.
Like this excerpt focuses on Trump criticizing Kamala Harris because she's never worked at McDonald's. It feels like. I don't know. Like they're trying to appeal to a very specific audience.
Yeah. Totally. It's a great example of what we call framing in media studies. So by highlighting this interaction, it makes Trump seem relatable, like he's somebody who understands hard work, even if it's all just for show, you know?
Right.
It plays into this populist image that he's been building for his whole career.
So it's not really about whether Kamala Harris actually worked at McDonald's or not. It's about the bigger message they're trying to send.
Exactly. They're using this event, this whole stage thing at McDonald's, to make a broader point about the candidates and what they stand for.
Right, and it's interesting. This excerpt even goes on to talk about all the good things about the event, like Trump joking with the staff there, the huge crowds, all the media attention. It's such a different tone than that Philadelphia Inquirer piece.
Totally. This is a classic example of how different outlets, especially those that have a political slant, will choose what information to focus on. So even if they're reporting on the same event, they can end up telling totally different stories.
Yeah. It makes you realize how important it is to think about where you're getting your information from. Like, you can't just trust everything you read,
Yeah,
especially during an election.
absolutely. That's why media literacy is so important.
Totally.
You have to think about the source, any biases they might have, and how they might be presenting the information to try to change your mind.
It's crazy how one event can be spun in so many different ways.
Yeah. It shows you how powerful media is and how easy it is to fall into these traps. You got the simple event, like someone getting a burger at McDonald's.
Yeah.
And it becomes this whole battle of narratives.
Yeah. And we see it everywhere, right? From the newspapers to TikTok. It makes you wonder, like, how is anyone supposed to know what to believe?
That's the big question, isn't it? It all comes back to media literacy, especially now when there's so much information out there. You can't just passively read stuff anymore. You got to be skeptical. You got to ask questions.
Right. Like, it's not enough to just scroll through Twitter or whatever.
Exactly. You have to dig deeper.
So how do we do that?
Well, when you see a news story or a post online, ask yourself, who's writing this? Why are they writing it? Could there be another side to the story?
It's like putting together a puzzle. You need all the pieces.
Right.
Wow. This has been quite a deep dive. We went from burgers to media manipulation. Who knew a McDonald's visit could be so revealing?
It just goes to show that even something that seems totally normal can be used to influence people.
Yeah. It really makes you think about everything you see and read.
Absolutely. So next time you see a politician doing something, anything, remember that there's always more to the story. Keep asking questions and don't be afraid to be skeptical.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those questions coming. And keep those sources coming too.